are listening to WHOA Podcast, coming to you from Gainesville, Florida. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the WHOA GNV Podcast, the podcast bringing you businesses and individuals that make you go, whoa!
Whoa.
My name is Collin Austin. I'm the host. I never say that. People tell me that I never say that. You should introduce yourself once in a while, so that is my once in a while introduction. And today, I have a very special guest co-host.
Hey, hey, hey.
So my man, Michael Dees, is traveling. He is taking vacation because it's the last time to squeeze one in before back to school rush happens. August, New Scooters for Less is just absolutely insane. And so he's doing like some sort of baseball stadium tour. He's going to like 4 baseball games in like 5 days or something. And driving from city to city to city with one of his best friends. Ooh. Yeah. I mean, he's crazy like that. I mean, we all know this. But he's traveling. But today, I thought it would, I'm just like, you know what? If Mike's not going to be here, who should I bring on as my guest co-host? I was like, no, there would be nobody better. Nobody better than my number one fan. I even shouldn't say my fan. The number one podcast. That's not even fair to say that.
I am loyal.
Yeah, I am loyal. We have Lindsay Higgins from Legacy Events 119. I like to say Legacy Events 911.
Turn
the fire on, baby.
That would be more appropriate for me.
And she was on the podcast just a few weeks ago. And the episode hasn't even aired yet. So she's like...
I'm kind of scared.
It's funny because we do this all the time, actually. So July 3rd, we're recording July 3rd. This episode goes out August 12th. Your episode, did I tell you when it goes out?
No, I don't even know.
Oh, you don't even know. It's the end of June, right? End of June. So, but anyway, when this comes out...
End of June?
End of July. Yeah, you're like, what? Did I miss it? Dang it. No, so this August... This is August 12th when this releases, and by then your episode will have been out, but right now while we're recording, it hasn't been out. So how are you feeling about it?
About the episode?
Yeah. Are you like,
I tried to rethink the episode over and over because it was all a blur to me. I don't know if it's going to be like that for you, but to me, after it was over, I was like, what did I even say? And then of course, I said to Brandon, I was like, okay, did I say anything offensive? Did I say anything that I should tell Collin to take out? And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going with it.
Yeah, I'm sure there was something.
Yeah, I'm sure there was too, because that follows me everywhere I go.
I just remember it had a lot of good energy. I'm excited to see the playback.
I had a blast.
Yeah, it was fun, right?
Yeah.
It's good. What was the one thing, what's like the biggest surprise about podcast life that you've discovered?
I think just how simple it is. Really, you come in, you sit in front of the mic, and you're yourself.
Yeah, a lot of people do overthink it though.
You don't have to. Worried. You really, the more authentic and the more real you are, the more people are drawn to it. I mean, I know that's how I am.
Yeah.
I do not like it, and there's some very high, well-known podcasters that whenever I'm listening to them, I can tell they're reading it. Like, you can hear them reading the script, and I don't like that.
Yeah. I don't read anything.
No
pressure. Like, I have, some
don't sound like you're reading today.
Yeah, I don't...
I've never heard you sound
like that.
You don't know me.
Florida
Haven't met
Club
me.
was founded in Gainesville, Florida by former UF runner Enoch Nadler.
Yeah, that.
Well, so before we because this is going to be a fun episode, I can tell already. Like, very casual conversation, which is the episodes that I like, and less interviewee, more just conversational, which is the best. So before I go too deep, I mean, it'd probably be okay for me to introduce our guest into this conversation. So. And I meant to ask you before we record how to properly say your last name. Is it Nadler?
Yep.
Okay,
perfect.
so here we go.
Good.
Today on the show. that sounds a little scripted. It's just, I'm now getting used to
your flow.
The flow. Mm-hmm. That it's
66 episodes in.
66 episodes in.
All right,
so here we go. Today on the show, we have Coach Enoch Nadler, co-owner and founder of Team Florida Track Club, a local running club based here in Gainesville, Florida. Welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah, really excited to be here. And I'm used to being the hype guy, the coach, the energy, but today I just kind of get to sit back.
Yeah?
You're taking
Dude, no, still bring it. Bring the energy. Still be the coach. Teach me everything I'm doing wrong. Everybody else likes to. So it's like, Collin.
Is that why you brought me on?
Collin, need you to improve here. I need you to improve here. I need you to improve here. Yeah. Hey, I need it. I want to be good. I want to be the best. So
awesome.
So definitely tell me when I suck, and it'll be good. So, well, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for waking up early for us. Right before we started, I had California Love by Tupac hype song on. That's my hype song. And then I was like, oh, do you have a hype song? I was like, no. Wait, let's record the podcast and let's ask. So, like, real quick, like, do you have a hype song?
Usually like Eminem, kind of, early 2000s, some of that stuff.
Like which, like if you were going to pick an Eminem song, like the
8 Mile type of mentality, where you're getting that going.
Getting a little bump going.
Yeah.
You put the earphones on, you're out there on the, like, just warming up, doing the run.
Usually like driving there or something like that, not like right before the run.
Yeah, and right before we hit record, you said, he's like, yeah, so I've, I already woke up, I've got my 9 miles in already. I'm like, 9 miles? What time did you wake up to go running 9 miles to make it to a podcast at 7:30 in the morning?
Not as early as you'd think. 5:45, out the door
I was up before
6. Yeah, out the door at 6, back at 7, showered, grabbed a banana, and here I am. So.
Dude,
when you run at that pace, I guess.
It was an hour run. So,
you can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why he's here, because that makes you go, whoa. Mm-hmm. You're like, whoa. So, well, I'm super excited to dive into your story a little bit. So my son Schaefer, like, this is really the first time we've really met and talked, but like my son Schaefer is an avid runner. You know this?
I've seen it on Instagram.
Thank you so much. Just like boosting my ego.
I've seen it on Instagram.
Colin, I watch your Instagram. Thank you. Makes me feel so special. You can follow me on Instagram at Collin Austin. I put great content out.
Your child running down the sidewalk. But hey, I enjoy it.
Hey, somebody, you don't know. Value is subjective. Somebody might find that valuable.
You should try to, make him Insta famous.
I should,
Is he into that?
Oh, we could totally dive into like personal brand a little bit, because it's funny that you even say that. Like, I've definitely been thinking about like, hey, maybe I need to make him a website, record some of this, put it online, because and maybe you can even like give some tips on like, I mean, and maybe I'm like, just proud dad, but I don't know what a 9-year-old runs a 5K in. When I see my 9-year-old running a 5K in 20 minutes and 40 seconds, I'm like, that's pretty good. I mean, from my perspective, maybe it's not good, but is that good?
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, he's a good runner for sure. But I think it's better to leave it at that.
Yeah.
At that age.
Don't get too.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely a gifted runner, but sometimes, I have a lot of experience with parents and not to get all like,
they put like pressure on him. It's like just a lot of pressure.
Let him enjoy it. He's playing soccer, having fun. I think that's what I told your wife too. Is just like
let it go.
Yeah, don't make it too serious. You have your whole life to be a serious runner. As a kid, just have fun with it.
Yeah, that's good advice. And the whole reason he even got into it was because that morning mile program that they do at school.
That's a great program.
So he gets out there and he just starts running these laps.
And that keeps it really casual. They encourage them to run, but it's not super competitive, time driven. And it gets like that in high school. It's better to wait.
Yeah.
Just keep it fun.
Have you heard of that program?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they
run in the morning, right?
They get out there for like
30
now
minutes,
it's like I think it's 15 minutes now. They need to bring it back to 30 minutes. Right? They need to bring it back to 30 minutes, because I mean, he was out there and he was running, and I think from what I understand, it was a way for them to really kind of burn off energy before going into the classroom, so they're not bouncing off the walls when they like start class. But he gets out there and he just starts running, and he's like, how many laps did you get today? 12? I'm like, okay. So you ran 3 miles before going to class. That's great. No, I mean, it really is. I mean, he blows my mind. But yeah, like, and I feel like I am kind of that way. It's kind of like, you want to go do this 5K? Cool, I'll show up. But now, like, I'm kind of making it one of my goals to kind of at least get up to a place where I could like run it with him. Because I used to run a lot when I was younger, and then of course, go to college and start a business, and you're working 12 hours a day. And
excuses. Come on, get out there.
No, I'm not kidding. It 100% is excuse. Yeah. It's all excuses. Like, it's funny, and I think as you get older, because now I'm 30, I just turned 37, so now like you get here and you're like, dang, like you need to prioritize your health. Like, if you want, as an entrepreneur, if you want to invest into yourself, like, how could you not invest into your health if you want to do this long term? And now I don't need to go like running 9 miles every morning, I don't think.
No.
But you know, like
9 minutes would be a good start for me.
Get the heart rate up, get some exercise, but you know, I don't know. I mean, what should I do? As like somebody who just wants to like
a layman
stay
I
healthy.
Think the important thing is to find like what you enjoy doing for exercise and then follow that. You know, if it's running, if it's swimming, if it's going to the gym, but something that gets you active and kind of creates that routine for you.
Okay.
But you're absolutely right. Like it's kind of use it or lose it, and especially, you know, I have a birthday coming up in a few days, you know, getting in the mid 30s, and we're kind of at that use it or lose it stage. You know, we can kind of bank on in our early 20s, you know, we can just kind of do whatever and we'll be okay. But as we, you know, start getting into 30s, 40s, for sure, if you're not taking care of yourself, finding that routine, you know, I have a lot of people that come to me that maybe didn't find that, and it's a lot harder later in life to come back around. It's possible for sure, but it's better to set those habits now. And so it's just find something that you enjoy. Like you said, you know, if it's getting out and running with your son or just getting out, you know, I think one thing that's great about running is it's so easy. Like I said, you know, I rolled out the door, got in a run, bang, 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 you know, and it kind of fits a busy lifestyle. But there's other things that you can make work like that as well. So it's just something that you have that creates, you know, stress relief, exercise, and some healthy habits.
Yeah. Lindsay, how many miles did you run this morning?
I've probably run a total of 9 miles ever. I'm not a runner.
You're not.
Until you are.
I know. I need help. Yeah. I don't think I breathe properly.
Yep.
I'm serious.
No, that's a real thing. That's not real thing. Like that's a real thing. People, you know, like people spend a lot of time like learning how to breathe in the pool, learning how, like and learning how to swim.
I used to swim.
Yeah, like
but not run.
Running, people think is just something you naturally know how to do and do well because you're able to do it without drowning, you know, like in the pool or something like that. Yeah. But really, to be able to run and run well and to enjoy it and to avoid injury and things like that, you do need some direction. So that's actually, like, saying that makes a ton of sense. Like,
I think if I was taught, maybe I should be taught to breathe properly, I think it would make a big difference. Yeah. But that's usually what gets me.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Like, so I used to be a pretty big runner when I was younger. I wasn't really on a team or anything, but like it was really just because I was a big soccer player, so it's just like
you have to run.
You got to run a lot. And then when I got older, I was like, you know, I need to run more. I need to just like really. I mean, for that benefit, just like having more energy when I come to work and being able to go a long amount of time, that kind of thing. I feel good about myself. But I've always, I mean, like I've just really not liked running. Mm-hmm. You know,
running's not really enjoyable at first, and I don't say that because it's like not an enjoyable thing to do. It's just really hard to do, either if you know, like you're not able to breathe correctly or run correctly, but also even myself, like if I take a break from running, the first few weeks getting back into it are always pretty challenging. You know, you just don't feel great. The body's kind of readapting to what you're doing. It's a struggle. Even the best times of the year, not in the summer. Like if you start back in the summer, forget it, you're going to feel terrible. But after a few weeks, things start to get easier, the body starts to feel better, and so it's making it through that initial period. It's kind of like if you go to the gym and you work out really hard, you know, you're really sore, you're not like, oh, I want to keep doing this, feels terrible, you know? So it's similar to that.
You know what I do really like about it now? Is so I do like go running routinely. I mean, not every day for 9 miles. Like, I'm almost kind of jealous of that now. It's probably gonna get brought up a lot.
It would be a great goal.
You know, but a few times a week I'll just go for a jog, and the thing that I really like about it now is that it's my best thinking time. Mm-hmm. Like my head gets so clear. I'm like running and I'm like, so I have to stop because I gotta like write down ideas. Yeah. So I got like my phone with me. I'll like listen to music, and then I'm like, I gotta stop and I gotta like write that idea down into a thing, or something comes to mind, or, you know, it's just it's like that in the shower too. Yeah, it's like anytime you don't have a very convenient place to write something down is when like
I
all
was
the great
just thinking
come.
As you were saying that, so I was like, well, I do that in the bathtub, but not running. But yeah,
well, it's time away from your phone, time away from distractions.
Yeah,
you know, that's when we do our clear thinking. Yep, and deep thought. So
that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, so all right, so let's kind of like dive into a little bit of the story now. Cool. Like how did you even get to this point where you're this coach, and I mean, you just recently did the Boston Marathon and like a whole bunch of stuff. So like I'm excited to hear it. So just kind of take us back to where this became a passion and is now really life.
Yeah, so I would say, you know, my running story and my coaching, you know, business and story are pretty intertwined. You know, they're kind of one and the same. Cool. I grew up just down the road from here, actually out in Fort White, Florida.
Really?
Yeah. So out in the woods.
She's from out there in the woods.
Yeah, I'm from out there too.
All right, whereabouts?
I actually live between Fort White and Brantford on the river, but I went to middle school at Fort White Middle School.
I was homeschooled.
Okay. Yeah. I was like, I wonder if we went to school at the same time.
Yeah. No.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I was living out there right near the Shuckney, actually, right by the river. Seemed to me like a normal upbringing, but looking back, it was a little strange, a little out there. My mom was kind of like a hippie. We lived in like an old log cabin, and when I say old, it was like 130, 140 years old.
Wow.
Like, it was pretty
real
unique.
Deal.
Yeah. But played a lot outside. Kind of started running really, just naturally around the woods, having fun, building forts, things like that. And then we ended up moving. Because there was no high school actually at the time in Fort White. We moved over to Keystone Heights. My older brother was going into high school, so we were homeschooled through middle school, and then he went to high school at Keystone, and then it was there that I actually started running and training kind of through soccer. That's how a lot of people get into running. I was like, my older brother was doing track, and I was like, I'll go out, check it out, see what it's about, and get in better shape for soccer. And next thing I knew, I was like quitting soccer. It's kind of one of those things where it's, at first I was good at it, I was doing well at it. It's something you're excelling at. It's usually something as a kid, especially, you'll kind of follow and do. But then I started to really fall in love with it and learn about the sport and wanted to get better and improve. And there just weren't any running resources in Keystone. We have a different coach every year, the football coach would kind of do this, do that, whatever. So I started to take it upon myself to learn and started coaching my teammates. It's a small group, not a lot of people run at some of the smaller schools because of that, the lack of continuity with the coaches. So I started kind of organizing runs, getting the team out and building kind of that culture there. I really enjoyed it. It was something I was passionate about, but it was sort of out of necessity. And then I went on to run for the University of Florida here in Gainesville from 04 to 08, and I continued to learn, continued to coach some high school kids, and had a good career here, studied business. But during that time, I put a lot of energy into running, and then over the summers, it was kind of during the poker boom. So actually after college, I started playing poker professionally and did that for a long time.
For real?
Yeah. So I was a
That's
professional.
interesting.
Professional
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Lived in Vegas for over a year or so.
Really?
Played in the World Series of Poker.
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
Like, can we go back and find it on the TV episodes and stuff?
I did not make it in the main event to the TV episodes.
Okay.
That's a little later in the game. But,
Okay.
But yeah.
But you were like, did you have an outfit where you like
the
hat,
glasses
and like poker face and like.
Yes and no. You wear a lot of clothes because it's kind of cold in there. They really keep it cranked down, but I'm not like, I've got to be incognito and no one see what I'm doing. But yeah, did that for a while and played mostly online. 90% of the time, like I'd play online, and it was kind of a new direction for that running passion. But I felt like I needed a break, but it was something I could focus that kind of intense energy and focus into. So did that for several years.
I always get curious, does anything like that, those little breaks, and you go play professional poker, does anything like that come back and help you like later on? And like, I mean, I don't know if running, you always, maybe you got the competitors, you put your poker face on. Like, I don't know. Like, is there anything that you've been able to translate from that to what you're doing now?
For sure. Okay. But it's not quite that.
Okay.
I would say like as a poker player, that wasn't like really how I played poker, especially playing like online where you're not sitting face to face. But really most poker playing, unless you're really good at like reading people and you're like an FBI profile or something, you're really just, it's math, it's, following patterns, it's kind of being aware, things like that, and just discipline and learning, and like, it's more of skill than like deep reading people. At least it was for me. And especially playing online, like that's all it's about is numbers and being able to multitask and like handle a lot going on. But what's interesting is actually now, like I coach so many runners, and in this day and age, a lot of that is online. So I actually have my same like poker setup. I have like a 34-inch like curved monitor.
Oh, wow.
And so now I use that to like plan training schedules for people. So it's sort of like my job actually isn't that different than playing poker. I'm just like writing schedules for people on there. It's a lot of number-based stuff. It's, it's math. I wouldn't really say the running side's science. Poker's not really science, it's more math-based. But, it's actually pretty similar. It translates over pretty well, and it's allowed me to kind of handle I'm used to sitting at the computer for long periods of time and grinding that out. So
yeah.
But anyhow, played poker and lived. My wife and I met my wife Angela, who's also a business partner with Team Florida Track Club. We met here in Gainesville, actually at a football game back in 2009. So we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary of meeting at least. Cool. And but we ended up, shortly after moving out of state, we lived in Wisconsin, Las Vegas, then in Dallas. And when we were in Dallas, I actually got back into the running scene, started like a small group there of elite guys I was like training with, coaching and stuff, but just always informal. I never did it as a job, but had qualified for the Olympic trials there the first time around in Dallas, training there. But after living around the U.S. and kind of working and saving some money, we actually decided to move abroad. So we sold everything. This was back in like 2014.
Dang.
And just Angela, my wife.
Just like on a whim?
Yeah, we just wanted, we figured we were young. We didn't really have anything tying us down. So we sold,
You're
sold
like,
our
I can
stuff
run over there. I can run over here.
Yeah, and that's the great thing with playing poker too, is, playing online poker, we packed a couple monitors into our suitcases, a pillow, foam roller for running. And that's all we had. And we hit the road in like the summer of 2014, moved down to South America, spent some time in Ecuador, like surfing on the coast, living in the mountains, traveling the country. Then came back, visited family for a little while, and then went to Europe. We lived in Malta, Indonesia, Australia, New Zealand, and then to Canada. Dang. And then really, like, we weren't sure if we were going to just settle somewhere abroad or, where we were going to come back to. But it was sort of during that time, seeing the world, having lived around the U.S., there was something sort of drawing us back to Florida. My wife grew up down in Tampa, and we have family in the area and stuff. And it wasn't really something that we'd planned, but we just sort of felt like it was, time to go back. So we moved back to Gainesville about a year and a half later after, of traveling around the world. And so it's been about 3.5 years now, and it's been a good decision. Yeah.
All right, so when you're bouncing around the world, you're playing online poker?
Yeah.
This is how you're making money?
Yeah, so what we'd usually do is
That's what I was wondering.
This sounds so dangerous. This sounds so dangerous. I'm like, I don't know if I want to go on the other side of the world. Be gambling.
Well, you're
online.
playing through the computer. It's not like you're sitting.
Yeah, I get that, but you're winning money, right? Like, how does?
Yeah.
I mean, did you? I know what would happen to me. I would
the foreign tax people
lose everything.
Listening to this.
No, I've always paid my taxes. Yeah, if the IRS is listening, yeah, okay. It's on file. Yeah, I mean, it's less complicated than you think. You just have a bank account. You play, and then if you make money, you send it to your bank account.
Right, but what if you lose all the money?
Then, I mean, you're losing money you had, so then you're just losing your own money. It's not like you're like taking out a line of credit or something like that.
No, I know, but like, what if you lost all the money and you couldn't keep traveling, or like you didn't, not once, like you were just that confident in yourself, you're like, I got this. Like,
so
you're a risk taker.
You're.
No,
I feel like
no, not at all.
Because I think this whole story is very risky.
This is super risky. You're definitely a risk taker.
But you look very calm and like controlled.
Very. No.
Really?
I guess that's why he's good at poker.
It's really not as risky as you'd think. So first off, with anything, there's always like stakes. So there are people that play very high stakes poker and that are constantly risking their whole bankroll, or literally lose. Like there's very few guys, but there's guys at the highest level that are playing what they call like nosebleed cash games, where they'll lose $1 million in a day or $2 million. Like, I mean, it's like big swings. But I played tournament poker, which you buy in for a set amount. They give you chips, whether it be you're at a casino or you're playing online, you get a set amount of chips, and you're only in for that buy-in. And then you can't lose any more money beyond what you bought into that tournament. But when you're playing online, I would play between 10 to 25 tournaments at once. But again, it's just a set amount that you're buying into and playing for. So usually like on a given day, I'd buy into like $500 to $1,000 worth of tournaments. You're not going to lose more than that. So if you only have $500 to $1,000, you probably shouldn't do that. But you only want to buy in for maybe a couple percentage of your total bankroll. So if you had $100,000, you could buy in for $1,000 a day. Unless you go on 100 days straight of losing, and at some point you could be like, this isn't working out, then you could say, all right, enough.
You know, we probably should have had them on with the husband-wife episodes.
To hear her take on this?
And had Angela.
Is she a poker?
No, she's not a poker. She's an engineer, you know, and we always kind of kept our jobs separate in the sense that, like, I wasn't, like, in there, like, oh, let me see what you're doing at your, you know.
But she was always like, oh, yeah, for another $500 online poker.
I have
go right ahead, honey.
I think he wins a lot.
Yeah.
That's the vibe.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Well, it was like a steady, like, job is basically all it was. It was, you know, if I was losing money for a period of time, like, I would have reevaluated, like, change, like, it's about game selection, playing games that you can beat, things like that. It's not about, like, you know, taking big risks or making tons of money, like, you know, quickly. It's
consistency.
You know, it's about consistency and treating it that way. So
this is fascinating.
Yeah,
I didn't expect the podcast to go there here today.
I mean, that's what's so great about the podcast. Like, you really just don't ever know.
Yeah.
I mean, because you were using this as a way to fund a lot of this travel?
We had saved money. And basically what we did is we would travel to a place, usually like rent, you know, an Airbnb or something like that. We didn't want to be like, we weren't like backpacking. We were a little old for that and, you know, needed to have more stuff. It wasn't like we were just carrying around in a backpack, literally. So we'd like rent like an Airbnb and then use that sort of as our hub. So like there's like big poker series throughout the year, like the spring championship of online poker, or the fall champion, things like that. So like during those, I'd play for like a month or so straight, and then we'd travel for a few weeks or something like that. So and when we were in those areas, it was kind of cool because we actually got to experience what it was like to actually live there. It wasn't like living like the real like tourist life. You know, it wasn't like we were just like, let's just hit everything. You know, it was like really getting, you know, you're like going
like
to
a real resident.
Yeah, you're like going to the local markets, and like, you know, we had friends in the like that we'd make in the area, like in Ecuador. Like I made some good friends with some of the elite runners there, some Olympian guys there, and like would train with them, and like we went to their family like Christmas, and like, you know, so some of those traditions and things like that was really cool to experience. And then like when we were on the coast, like the internet was terrible, so I just pretty much surfed and hung out and like, you know, did like kind of had a break from that. And then my wife, you know, she blogged while we were traveling and cooked a lot and learned a lot and just took time to read and experience, you know, kind of a different side of things. Because as, you know, most of us know, it's like, you know, you go through high school, college is super intense, especially if you're studying engineering. You know, for me, studying business was a lot more relaxed, you know, online classes and stuff like that. But running was pretty...
And what year were you at UF, you said?
04 to 08. But running was pretty intense.
So I had just finished when he had started.
Yeah.
So classes, I guess they were getting online at that point.
Most of my classes were online, you know, so
were they still on Cox TV at that point? No. Okay.
Maybe they were, but I don't think I watched them. You could watch them
and
on
what'd you make? You said business, but just
general studies.
Okay.
Yeah. You could watch them on like 2.0 speed. You know, you could like speed them up in the QuickTime player. So it was very efficient. Yeah. You know, some of them.
Did you have to download it first at that time, or could you stream it at that time?
I think we could stream it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really?
Things were really getting advanced.
Things were. I mean, I remember when I had to like either download them or like the screen was like literally like that big. Like watching class like this size is like super tiny, and like, I mean, I set like a VCR to record it on Cox Channel 5. Yeah.
So old.
I mean, I know. It makes me feel so old. I'm not even kidding. Like, you know, when you're 20, you're like, man, like all these old people around me, and then you're 37, and then I don't even think of 37 as old.
It's not.
But
when you think in the stream of technology,
VCRs and like recording class on Cox Channel 5, I'm old.
Yeah.
Dinosaur land.
Yeah, I mean, I remember recording the Friends finale on a VCR. Yeah.
And now you can rewatch it 100 million times on
all
Netflix.
day long.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, that's super interesting. All right, so you're back in Gainesville at this point.
Yep. So
Quick question.
Yep.
Can I ask a
Yes,
question?
of course.
Okay.
You're the co-host.
Of all the places you lived, where did you love the most?
Ooh,
like,
good question.
which place did you love the most?
So Bali was pretty nice. A friend actually I made here at UF was living there at the time, so we actually went over there and stayed with him, and he had a really nice big villa like near the beach, and
Swanky.
that was pretty nice. But Ecuador was also really, really cool. Very different experience. Very diverse.
Did you vlog this experience? Video any of it?
Lost opportunity.
We have a ton
right
of
there.
photos and stuff like that, and videos and stuff. Yeah, but
Okay.
if you keep too much, then you're not tempted to go back. You know, so we'll see. Yeah. But there's a lot of cool places and a lot of places that we haven't been that, still hope to see at some point. But so we
super cool.
eventually decided to move back to Gainesville, and coming back, along the way, with all the running and coaching, something I always had considered doing was starting like a run coach team. But we never had been anywhere that we saw ourselves staying. And it's really not the type of business that you want to start and build and then leave. It's not super transferable, unlike poker. It's just you, computer, boom, boom, you can go wherever you need to. So moving back to Gainesville, this is a community where I started running. I started with the Florida Track Club almost 20 years ago. It seemed like a good place and a place that we wanted to be long term. So I started, less than a year after we got back. My wife's working as an engineer at the time, and I was still playing poker, but then started like a pilot program just to kind of see how I liked, coaching group practices, coaching all ages, all abilities, and so started like a small, short pilot program with the Florida Track Club. They hired me on as a coach. Did that for a couple months. This was 2016. And it went really well. I really enjoyed it. And then I talked to Angela, and we decided to go for it and launch Team Florida Track Club. So partnered with the Florida Track Club to use that name since they've been around for a really long time and kind of where I got my start with running, but launched our own coaching business. And things have kind of taken off from there. I would say, our vision's always been to have less the business side, something that we think about, but it's really about building a community and building kind of a tribe and a presence in place where people feel like they belong and have a group and support group and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's focused around the passion that we all share for running, and it doesn't matter how fast you're running, how much experience you have, things like that. We all train together, which I think is pretty cool and pretty unique, and is definitely what's made us successful. So.
And you're the best one out of all of them, right?
For now, yeah. So we'll see. As we have
any creeping up on you? Yeah.
He's like, no, not even close.
I wish, if there's more fast people, then there's people to train with, people to run with, and that's one thing that's great about having a big group here in Gainesville with over 100 runners that are out there training together. Is most people on the team all have other people around their paces to either that they're pushing or that are pushing them. So I do most of my training alone. So it would be nice, I would not be opposed to having some other fast guys to train with.
No one can keep up. A loner out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you run 9 miles between, what would you say, 5:45 and 6:30?
It's an hour,
yeah. It's an hour. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so you just recently went and did the Boston Marathon.
Yep.
I heard something crazy, you finished in the top 10?
Well, I was top 10 overall American, but I was 22nd overall. It was a pretty competitive field, but
yeah. I mean, how many people run the Boston Marathon competitively?
The elite field's around 70 guys that come in from all over the world to run, so it's a pretty good elite field. And then there's 30,000 people overall in the main field, and we had a big group from our team that went up as well. I had 17 runners that was coaching there as well, so it kind of always goes together, the running and the coaching, which is pretty cool. To have that group there, that support, and have everyone. So
what was your time, pace?
So I ran 2 hours and 17 minutes, so it's 5:13, 5:14 per mile.
So does that mean you started out faster than that?
You try to run pretty
pace
even.
Yourself.
Yeah, pretty even for the marathon's the best approach. So most of my miles were around that. The Boston Marathon is uniquely challenging in that the first half is mostly downhill.
Yeah, there's hills.
And so you do run a little faster on the first half because it's easier, but then the hills start. So your quads kind of get thrashed on the downhills.
You've been to Boston, right?
Yes, I've been to Boston, but I have not seen the Boston Marathon.
They actually drive you out of town, and then so it's a point-to-point course. They bus you out, and then you run 26 miles back into Boston. And so the last couple miles are through Boston, but there's some big hills.
There is, the terrain walking through Boston.
Over by Boston College. Yeah. There's the
5 minutes and 14 seconds.
Yeah.
So I have a question about that, not to be negative. So
I like how you
okay.
just kind of
not to be negative.
Put that out there first.
So whenever you run that well, these are numbers that very few people can get, and then you finish 22nd. Not saying that's bad. Does that make you be I have worked so hard, I'm killing it, and I'm still 22nd? Does that get you down?
Dude, that is a great question. I'm sorry, that's a really great question.
Because that would get me down. I would be I have trained and trained and trained, and I am elite. but I'm still 22nd. That would really send me over the edge.
and me, I'm like, and we're from our seats here. You're like, dang, if I could do it,
right?
You're like, whoa, that'd be really, really great. But
so, what's your thought? Yeah,
that's very interesting.
Yeah, so I would consider myself a competitive person, but going in, you sort of already know what like kind of what your goals are, what you're hoping to accomplish, and how you're hoping to challenge yourself. So you are racing the other people in the field, but my mindset, like I take running seriously. I train hard. I push myself, but I'm not depending on it for my living as a professional runner. Whereas the guys at the top of the field, and I'm not saying that they're working harder than me. They may be, but that's not the point I'm trying to make. They may be more talented than me, but it also is like that's their goal going up there is to win the race. Mm-hmm. My goal.
Do you feel like you're competing with them or competing with yourself?
I mean, you're definitely competing with the guys around you, and like when there's guys on the course, like especially towards the end of the race, in the marathon especially, you sort of work together to push each other
the
to
stamina.
run. And like different guys are setting the pace, like you have a pack and things like that. But later, and in the marathon, that sort of lasts longer because it's such a long race, and you'd rather not be out there just like by yourself battling the elements, and running behind people breaks some of the wind. It sort of sets the pace for you, things like that. But towards the end of the race, you're definitely trying to beat people. But top 15 finishes in the prize money at Boston, and first is I think like $150,000 or something like that. I mean, on top of that, the guys that are winning are sponsored. Then they also get big like bonuses on top of that. So I wasn't really competing at 22nd in this race for prize money. I do, in other races pretty often, but they're smaller races generally and less prize money. So you are trying to beat people, but that's not really my mindset for running or for racing. It's about bettering myself, pushing myself. And if that means that there's people around me that I can then push myself and, challenge myself against, that's great. But that's not really the mindset coming in. I'm not delusional. I don't think that I'm the best runner in the world and that every race I'm going to go to, I'm going to win. And if you do, you're probably not going to the right races. If I just stayed at small races here in Gainesville and won every single one, I could be like, I'm the best runner here. But it's about going out and getting beat and seeing guys that are doing things better than you to be inspired and to challenge yourself. So, but Boston actually ended up a little strange. I actually ran pretty much the entire race by myself, which usually doesn't happen, especially in a race that big. But it just sort of how it packed up. A big group went out ahead faster than I was hoping to run, and then the guys behind me all ran slower. So I actually ran pretty much the whole way on my own, which was a unique experience, especially in such a big race like that, but it was kind of a cool challenge.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, are you even focused? I mean, I know you were talking about Olympic trials and that kind of thing. I mean, is this an aspiration? Is this something that you want to do? Yeah,
so I'll be running in the Olympic trials. I qualified for the Olympic trials, like I'd mentioned briefly, when we were living in Dallas. Through the half marathon, you can run like a faster half marathon time, and that'll get you into the marathon Olympic trials. There isn't a half marathon, but I actually didn't run a marathon during that time. I'd planned to, but then we decided to move abroad, and I'd stepped back from running. So it was coming back to Gainesville and running with the team that I kind of wanted to finish that and experience it. Yeah, exactly. Of running in the Olympic trials, but also running a marathon. We're 8 months out from the Olympic trials, and I'm pretty excited. They're up in Atlanta, which is really cool.
Okay.
They move around to different locations, but it's just up the road in Atlanta. So I've got a big group going up there, and really looking forward to that. And actually, we just had a lady on our team here, Kelly Griffin, who qualified for the women's race, which is really awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. She's 41, mother of 3.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, hadn't run more than 10 miles just a couple years ago, but it's really taken to it. And just in her second marathon 2 weeks ago, ran 2:43, which is like just over 6 minutes per mile. And qualified. So we'll both both be going up, and we've got a big group from the team that are going to come up there and cheer, and it's a spectator-friendly race. Yeah. But as far as my mindset for the race itself, you have to finish top 3 out of the 180 guys, or however many are up there, of the best runners in the U.S., which is a tall ask for sure. I plan to compete and push myself and challenge myself, but it's not like if I go there and run a really strong race and I don't finish in the top 3, like I'm not going to be disappointed, or
right. Those
aren't really my expectations. Yeah.
He's a very balanced thinker.
You are.
Yeah, I know. Something to aspire to.
Being a balanced thinker.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, it's funny because I don't know. You seem very calm.
Yeah, he's very
relaxed.
controlled. But that's, I think that's why you can do it.
Do you have to have that kind of mindset when you're out there running? Like, I mean,
it helps, I would think.
It's kind of like,
if you're really overexcited, and one, you're probably going to do something stupid, and two, it uses extra energy. So you need to have kind of a methodical kind of thought process and be, somewhat more calculated, I would guess.
like, when you're running for that long, are you thinking? Are you like, what's going through your head?
So do you mean in a race or just like a normal run?
I mean, I guess what I'm trying, anything really, but like, I mean, like in a marathon, with it being so long, I have to feel like it's just as much of a mental game. I could be completely wrong. I don't know.
For sure.
But like very much a mental game too. Like, so what do you have to do to kind of get your mind right for that?
Yeah, so I would say the mental side isn't like going out for an easy run by yourself for like 2 hours or something like that. The mental side is more just like casual thought, and sometimes if you're doing, a lot of them by yourself, especially, like maybe you'd be like, oh, this is kind of getting a little boring or something like that. Yeah. But when you're racing, it really is the mental side where you have to be, focused, dialed in, and making sure, especially during the marathon, that you're like taking all your nutrition in. Like I consume 1,300 calories during the race through either, a lot of people take gels, or I actually had like fluid bottles that they place on the course for you every 5 kilometers. So you're taking those, drinking that. So you're making sure you're following your fueling plan. Okay. And a lot of people don't really plan this stuff out in marathons. That's why a lot of people struggle. But that's really important. So you're focused on those type of things, and then, following your pace. And I would say the other part of it is, staying in it mentally, not lapsing where you're like losing focus of pushing yourself. Because if you're really racing the marathon, like you're challenging yourself throughout the race, that doesn't mean you're going all out, over the first mile or the first half of the race, but it's still a pretty challenging pace throughout. And then later in the race, that's where it really gets to be a struggle, and your body's breaking down. And that's what makes the marathon unique, is it's kind of that mix of speed and distance together. And the last 10K of the race, that last 6 miles is really, really hard. And that's where you're kind of digging deep and just like basically focusing on keeping it moving and, just not stopping, not quitting.
I mean, are you thinking about anything while you're doing this? Like,
you're not like just having like casual thought and stuff like that. You're basically thinking about not stopping when your body's telling you to stop, kind of overriding that and pushing yourself and challenging yourself. But
do you keep any hype music still going, or like, do you not?
I don't ever listen to music.
Oh wow, I would need it.
Yeah,
right. It's like, you'd have to have like, you'd have to.
I would need the most angry music to keep me just like.
You and I would need that music throughout, and it gets more like, come on, you can do this, you got it. Like towards the end.
Yeah.
Seriously, like, I mean, I would, but you're just kind of in the zone.
I think that can only get you so far. That can get you kind of.
That's why we're not there.
Yeah, but. To really push yourself, and I think in my opinion, the problem with running with music, especially when you're trying to challenge yourself, is then you're not actually listening to your body, and like you're not as dialed in to what's going on. And
that makes sense.
One part you need to be able to override and push past what's going on, but you still need to have a healthy like connection with that, because if not, you're just going to push you hard, and then. The mental side can only get you so far. So if you're not in touch with your body and you're not listening to what's going on, as far as, you're just focused on your music or focused on something else, then you're going to break down and kind of lose focus, and, it's not the best.
Are you self-taught, like as far as the science of accomplishing this?
Definitely not. Yeah, no.
Okay.
Reading a lot of books, working with other coaches. I have a good friend that I went to college with, Matt Hensley, who lives out in Boulder and works with a lot of top coaches out there. And I work with him, and he actually helps me with my running, and it acts as kind of my coach and mentor as well. I think it's really important to have, as a runner, to have that support and have a coach, but even as a coach to have that. And I'm not reinventing the wheel when it comes to training or just like making stuff up and things like that. It's about, trusted approaches. And generally, most of the stuff that I prescribe my runners, like, it's things I've done myself and experienced and trained through. So, it's a science, running's a science-driven sport. But there's also the psychology side of it, which is science, but it's, everyone's so different and everyone needs something different. Everyone's motivated by different things. So, it makes for a really interesting job.
Okay, so for somebody like yourself who's well trained, and you go do a marathon, what's the recovery time? Like, what's the recovery like? Like, are you like, going out the next day? Like, does your body have to just sit still? I mean, obviously for us, like I'd be like unable to move, right? Like for a week after that. Yeah, and not kidding, because I mean, it's not even close to being the same thing, but like I did a Savage race once, right? And I had never like really prepared myself for it. I mean, I completed it, and I've always been pretty like, athletic and fine. Like I'm like, hey guys, we can do this. And so we went and did it. It was a lot of fun, really, really challenging. But like I slept for like 13 hours the next day. I'd slept so long. I mean, I was so worn out.
Yeah, those are hard races.
Yeah. I mean, what's the recovery like?
So for like shorter races up to like the half marathon distance, usually the next day, like I can get out for an easy run, and then the next week's a little lighter, but you can kind of get right back into training and continue to push on for a trained runner. For someone that's maybe a little less experienced and less trained, the shorter the distance, the more recovery time you need. But for the marathon, it doesn't matter if you're the best runner in the world, you need to take a break like after running a marathon and let your body recover, even if you're not sore. And I was, sore after Boston. My first marathon I ran at CIM almost, I guess, coming up on 2 years ago. And like I was waddling, barely moving through the airport. Everything was really sore, really beat up. Because when your body starts to break down and you continue to push past, that's when, you really start to break down your muscles, break down, your systems. And so you need several weeks of, take a break. You can do some like light cross training, but at least like a full week of no running. A lot of people take 3 weeks of full running. The best marathoner in the world, Eliud Kipchoge, who recently set the world record, he pretty much takes 3 weeks of, a physical break, but you also just need a mental break from all the training you've put in, from the race itself, and from pushing yourself. So you need that break, and that's why most experienced runners only run 2 marathons a year, even if they're pushing it, maybe 3. There's some guys that do more and can handle more, but it's generally what I see is not sustainable for most of us.
Have you ever had a stress fracture or anything?
I have not. In high school, I had really bad shin splints, but I think that was one, maybe my form. It's hard to look back and think exactly what I was doing then, but also just growing and through that time. But I've been pretty fortunate staying away from injuries and things like that and major setbacks. And that's how you really, to excel in running and to enjoy running, especially for most of us, it's just an enjoyable part of your lifestyle, and you don't want it to be more of a stress. But we do have athletes that do have injuries, and sometimes it's like a good question to ask following this: if you push too hard coming back from a race, if you're not listening to your body, maybe you're just going out and running with music on and you're like, I'll push through the pain. Running's not about pushing through real pain. It's about pushing through discomfort, but discomfort is when your body's being challenged. When something's breaking or hurting, it's time to take a break and step back and recover.
This is super interesting. I'm like a little mind blown by that.
I have another medical question.
I want to go run now.
What's your resting heart rate?
Ooh.
So I'm not a doctor, but it's around like 40.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, around 40. Yeah. I don't train by heart rate. I do have it on my watch, and it's something that I'll look at from time to time, but it's not the metric I use. I think it's not the best way to train. I think it's better to train off of pace and feel and be more in touch with those things, especially if you wear like the heart strap, like there's like a strap that you can wear, then you can get a more accurate reading. It can be a little better, but it still lags behind when you're doing like high intensity interval training and things like that. So it's better to have a real understanding of where you're at, and it's always better to do less, to go slower and be on the side of caution. You'll get where you're going maybe a few weeks later, but you're less likely to get injured, and you're less likely to like burn out or overtrain. And a lot of people, in this day and age, especially with fitness and attending fitness classes, like coaches want to push people to the max because then you feel like you're getting your money's worth. But the approach I take is more of like a training approach, that we're focused on performance as well as like a balance with your life. But like when you want to, if you're focused on actually performing, it's not about showing up at every practice and giving 110%, because that's really not sustainable from a performance side, but it's also not really a sustainable goal from like an energy and a life side either. It's better to show up and train how you're supposed to and bring the energy that you're supposed to than just be driven by like, wow, today I really sweated out there. Like I couldn't have made it another rep. If you're doing that week in and week out, like you're gonna need a break because you're breaking things down.
Yeah. Tell me, we got to wrap up in a few minutes, but tell me a little bit about like the business side of this now, because you say like your wife, she's really behind the scenes doing a lot of that work, right?
Yeah.
So
my wife, about a year into the business, she was still working as an engineer for the first full year, and she was doing a lot behind the scenes. I handle a lot of the coaching side. I handle all the coaching of the athletes, and then the coaching at the practices. But she was doing so much of, she set up our whole website, our whole payment processing system, was doing a lot of like our marketing, advertising, handling a lot of things while also working, her engineering job. And it was a lot. So we were doing well after our first year, and things were kind of progressing where we wanted them to be to be able to make that step. So she left her job and came on full time, with the team. And so, she does a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, handles all our merchandise, all that type of stuff. And we're not really like pushing to grow at this time. We actually have like a waiting list and really aren't accepting people.
That's just from a capacity standpoint?
Capacity standpoint. And we're not looking to take on other coaches, or like, I would say from a business standpoint for us, it's all about, I don't want to say balance, because I don't think that's really attainable. Like, there's times where you're like focused on it. Like right now, we're really focused like on my training, on the team, on that, and then eventually I'll probably step back from training super hard and super serious, and then push more into continuing to build the business and see where that goes. But she does a ton of that stuff and really handles that, and she has a lot more skills when it comes to the computer, and so she handles a lot of that side. So it's really great, and we work well together in that we have that, kind of different skill set, I'd say.
So like, what's the revenue structure? Like, is it like membership based?
Yep. So we're membership based. We have like over 100 members here in Gainesville, and then we also have about 25 to 30 clients that we coach around the country.
That's great.
And we haven't been taking too many of those on, but we try to always accept people locally. We sometimes will only accept them at a lower level, so we don't have too many people that have communication, or because there's different structures that you can come in at. Some of the people just come in as like a club runner. They show up at practices. They're kind of, I wouldn't say less serious, but maybe they just need less direction. And so it's membership based. We have three runs per week that we coach at. We're out at the UF track on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings, and we have like a long run.
What's the online aspect like? I mean, you got somebody across the country and you're coaching them. How are you doing that?
Yeah, so that's what's great with technology. I use a coaching platform called Training Peaks. That's basically, I set their schedule in that interface, and then they can go on there, see their whole schedule. It has all their details, all their plan, everything, and then it sends them an email automatically every day with their run for that day, for the next day. Then when they run, most people have Garmin's or Apple Watches or something like that. When they run, their data uploads and pushes directly to that, so I can see everything they're doing, all their splits, heart rate, cadence, everything, and so I have all that on this big platform where I can go in. I have all my athletes like in different folders, and I can manage and look at, and I check in with them, and you can leave like messages through the app, like through that platform, or I communicate with them through messaging or email and things like that. So just depending on the athlete.
Got it. Do you have to do a lot of coaching from the nutritional side as well, or?
So I'll give basic, like especially like in race nutrition for marathons and stuff like that I have down, but I refer people to a nutritionist that that's not a background that I have. If it's like just like what should I eat before a run, I can like help you out with that, but I'm not like structuring meal plans for people. I try to stick to what my skill set is and what I feel confident that I can deliver like a good product.
That's good.
Yep.
So it's kind of a more life question. Do you look at life as a sprint or a marathon? I think, we're always taught, I always look at just in the business world, and even in a lot of the stuff that we're doing from a media marketing side, I feel like, we get clients and it's like, okay, we got to like really do some of these short-term sprints because we got to show them some immediate results to kind of get some buy-in, to make them realize like, oh, okay, like this does work. But at the same time, a lot of the times I'm planting these seeds and doing a lot of things that's going to help them 5 years from now, whether or not they're a client at all. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I know that I got to do that because that's going to build for us what we call like long-term brand, right? And so I always feel like I'm doing both, but it's always, the marathon's always greater than the sprint. It's like I'm always planning for that. So how do you kind of approach life?
I think it's, like you just said, it's a mix between the two, but what I think happens often is we're often like getting involved in that sprint, that push. Like you get excited about something or you kind of go down one road, and it's important to be able to pull back and keep that bigger picture, sort of the marathon picture, where you're realizing that if you just go all out in a sprint, you're not going to be able to sustain that. So being able to understand the value that provides, that you can push at times where you need to push forward, and find that unbalanced approach to something where you are pushing to make something happen. Maybe you're starting a podcast or something, and at first it's really a struggle, but then you realize you can fit that into the greater big picture of your your long-term perspective.
It's not a struggle for me. I'm just like I'm just going to buy all this equipment and like
show up,
talk to people, and actually, it's it's funny because if there is a struggle, it's been the financial side. We've commented multiple times about how much time, money, and effort we're putting into this, and it's but I think that's gonna come back around. The thing is, like, I haven't focused on the truth is
I think that's why it's been successful.
Yeah,
you didn't come into this like plan thinking I want this to be the #1 podcast in the nation. Maybe you do, but. It's just a natural progression that it's taken off the way it has.
Yeah.
So if you're just like a regular person that hasn't been running and you have a goal where you're like, I just want to start running. Is that someone that can reach out to you and you can start that process, and how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, you can reach out to us through our website and come out and run with us, train with us, get some help with that. But if you are looking to get moving and get going with running, the key is starting slow. Not going out and running 9 miles for your first run. And people will do that, and then you're sore, maybe you get injured, or it really felt terrible. It's really you have to be able to walk before you can run. Get out and walk. It doesn't sound like it's great, but it makes a big difference. Work walking in. When people come out and they haven't been training, I'll often have them do like a walk-run approach where you mix in walking with your running. It's just about getting moving, and again, not getting out the door and sprinting, because you're not going to be able to sustain that. You're not going to be able to do that the next day. You're going to be sore, and so it's about that consistency of taking a longer term approach, and that's what's hard for people, is finding that. But the great thing about running or finding like a healthy passion is that brings a lot of other healthy things into your life, because it's really hard to be like, I want to eat better just to lose weight, or just to just to eat better. But when you have like, I want to eat better because I want to run better, then it starts to become tangible to something that you're interested in, something that you're passionate about, and something that the community you're part of is maybe supportive of. Or you're like, I want to get more sleep so that like I'm able to get up and run. If you're just like, I want to get more sleep because I'm tired all the time, like you're just like, I'm going to drink coffee, or do this or something like. But if you're able to connect to something that you enjoy and you're passionate about, then it all starts to come together, and it makes those life decisions a little easier.
That's awesome. This has been great.
Yeah, it's been very educational.
Dude, very educational.
Yeah.
Very and it's funny because the one thing I like about mixing the guests, we were talking about on right before we started, I'm like, man, it's so great because we get I got like some artists coming up, and we got athletes, and obviously it's very business focused, but it all is the same.
Yeah.
Like when you really look at the way you approach running or running a marathon or, achieving some major goal, like you approach it the same way. You start with a goal and you kind of like work backwards from that. And you're like, okay, well, from a nutrition standpoint, you need to do this, like all of it.
Yeah, it's just hard work.
It's just
like, you like literally approach these, you gotta crawl before you walk and before you run. And it's just,
or you just buy all the equipment and start a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even then you have to be willing to put in the time,
the learning curve,
right? It's like I don't think anybody starts a podcast, puts 5 episodes out, and expects it to be this big old thing, right? Like it's like if you really want to have impact, whether it's in your life as a runner, whether it's in a business or anything you do, like you have to be willing to put in the hard work and the time,
and willing to just start.
Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah.
And that's what I think.
That's what holds back a lot of people.
The podcasts, in my experience, listening to a lot of different podcasts and seeing the space, I think that it does a great job of actually telling exactly what you're just talking about. Like, it's about talking to real people and hearing more about the story of how they got there. Because a lot of times from the outside, it just looks like they're just like, I'm going to do this and do something big, you know. But really, it starts small, like you were just saying. You know, your first few episodes, you're just, you know, getting rolling, getting things going, and then, you know, later down the road, you can look back and see, wow, you know, like you put in all that work, you put in all that time, but this platform really allows people to tell that story so that other people realize that, you know, it is possible, but it is, you know, things take work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've said it multiple times in terms of like the reason why we started this. So it's like I've become very passionate about Gainesville, Florida, and I'm just constantly blown away by the people that live here.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we decided to move back.
There's such a variety.
I mean, you're just like, what? I mean, I'm just constantly blown away. And then, you know, to be able to share the story, like I'm a storyteller because I'm a marketer. Like that's what you do all the time. Like you tell stories, and for me to have the opportunity to like listen to everybody's story, it's super cool. And I don't know, it's just interesting, it's fun, and I think that's why it's at least for me, like I'm gonna continue to do it just because it's fun.
And that's why I listen,
and I love doing it.
I like hearing everyone's story.
You know, it's like, and you can take a lot away from it. It's crazy. So I don't know.
It's entertaining, but you learn at the same time.
Well, this is definitely like a free educational hour for me.
It is.
I learned so much. And then I get to like start the day and apply it to my day and have a different mindset a lot of times. And like, I mean, I've taken away something from every podcast. You know, this is at number 66. I mean, I'm gonna be the smartest guy in Gainesville. By the time we get to episode 500, I might probably 1,000 to be the smartest. It'll probably take a little longer.
A little bit longer.
But I don't know. I enjoy it, and so thank you for coming on, sharing your story. Best wishes with everything. Tell Angela to keep up the hard work behind the scenes.
I tried to get her to come, but she was.
Dude, that's such a vital piece too. You know, you really don't think. I mean, even my wife Shannon, like, you know. She does so much, and she's always behind the scenes, and she really doesn't take any credit for anything. But like, I wouldn't be able to do anything that I do without her, you know, and the stuff that she's doing back home. And so I mean, the behind the scenes person is super
teamwork's
important.
really powerful. So
we got a nurse over here. We got a nurse.
That's what I said to Brandon this morning. I was like,
Brandon.
I wear so many hats. I was like, I was a nurse yesterday, podcaster today, wedding entertainment person on the weekend.
That's funny.
Trying to, you know.
Well, tell Brandon thank you for letting you come and co-hosting the
he's
the
happy
show.
to let me go.
Yeah, get out of here. Leave me alone.
Go talk to somebody else.
Well, I hope you're as excited as I am about your episode coming out.
I am excited.
But when this is out, when this episode is out,
it will have been of the past.
It'll be of the past, and hopefully everybody liked it. So, but thanks for coming on. And
thanks for asking me.
Yeah, it was fun. So, and thanks again for coming on the show. Where can everybody like connect with you guys? Like, what's the website?
TeamFloridaTrackClub.com, or you can find me, Enoch Nadler on Facebook, or Team Florida Track Club on Facebook, and then Team_FTC on Instagram. We're active on all those platforms.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Awesome, man. Thank you again so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Gainesville World, everybody. This is the WHOA GNV podcast, the podcast bringing you businesses and individuals that make you go, whoa. I totally let you have that one. That was great. We'll see you later. Bye.